Welcome back. It's time now for Top Story, and the Palestinian campaign to join the UN as a full member state is poised to suffer a setback this Friday. In the coming hours, the UN Security Council will publish a report confirming that no more than 8 of its 15 members are ready to back that request. This leaves the Palestinians one vote short of the required majority. The US has made it clear that it will use its veto power on the Security Council to block Palestinian membership in any case, but that veto will now not be necessary. For more on this, I'm joined in the studio by our International Affairs Editor, Annette Young. Thank you for being with us, Annette. So you were covering the UN General Assembly back in September in New York. At that point, the Palestinians were confident, weren't they, that they would have enough votes to force the US to use its veto, thus embarrassing Washington. What's happened since then?
That's right, Rebecca. The whole point of this was to, in fact, they never really saw themselves achieving statehood. They knew that the Americans were going to do this, and what they wanted to do was to show the world that, as far as they saw it, the Americans are not honest brokers, and by the mere fact that they were going to use their veto to stop the Palestinians from achieving statehood would just basically show the world for what they stand for. But what actually happened in the period after that UN General Assembly is the Americans went in full diplomatic pressure mode. And so what they started to do is, and what we've got up here now on the screen is what we expect later today to be revealed in this UN Security Council report, which is, according to diplomatic sources, the countries that are saying yes to the idea, and that's Russia, China, India, Brazil, South Africa, Lebanon, Nigeria and Gabon. Now, the only one likely to vote no is the United States, and those likely to abstain are France, Britain, Germany, Portugal, Colombia and Bosnia. Now, I'll come back to France in a moment, but the two countries that the Palestinians were really hoping to get support from was, not surprisingly, Bosnia, given its Muslim population, and Colombia. And
that hasn't worked.
It didn't work, and obviously the behind-the-scenes pressure from Washington on those two countries was just way too much for them to turn around and say yes.
It's very, very tightly fought, very closely run, just it looks like one vote in it. What will be the next move on the part of the Palestinians? Have they got any wriggle room now?
Well, it leaves Mahmoud Abbas, the Palestinian president, facing a very difficult decision. He can still press for a council vote, but that's going to do nothing but invite failure and anger from the Americans and other European countries. So the most likely scenario is he might turn now to the UN General Assembly and go to them to become what they call, or seek rather, enhanced observer status. And that means that Palestine would become like what the Vatican is at the moment, or what Switzerland was up until 2002. So it's sort of one step down from statehood. And if that does happen, that would most likely be tabled on November 29th, the anniversary of the original 1947 decision by the United Nations to partition Palestine. A third option will be a Palestinian appeal to the International Court of Justice, which has determined whether the members of the Security Council are indeed justified in denying the Palestinian membership bid. But we have still yet to hear from the Palestinians what exactly they're going to do.
You mentioned there the enhanced observer status. Let's come back to France, because that's, of course, what France was calling for. Now, they voted yes at the UNESCO vote last week in support of admitting Palestine as a member, but it's not the case for the UN Security Council. So we're seeing a very inconsistent approach, really, here on the part of Paris, aren't we?
This is what the Palestinians have been talking about, and what others have been talking about, and in fact, it's angered many, including the Americans. But obviously, there was some deal that was done between Paris and the Palestinians that they would accept them as a UNESCO full member. And it is interesting that in the days leading up to that vote, the Palestinian President Mahmoud Abbas was in town.
And just very briefly, Annette, what are the Palestinians achieving by going through this? And are they going to continue to lobby other UN bodies to get full membership there?
They are indeed, Rebecca. We already know with UNESCO it's had an enormous impact from that. The UNESCO Director General is saying that they're facing a $65 million hole in their budget, and they're having to radically rethink what they can do. And the Palestinians say they're going to go ahead and approach other organisations, such as the World Intellectual Property Organisation, and others such as the International Atomic Energy Association and the World Health Organization, which are very, very serious, which rather has very serious impacts indeed for the Americans and their whole sort of global diplomatic approach on these matters.
Now, Annette, we can carry on the conversation with you, can't we, on your Twitter page. What's the address?
It's @Annette F24, so yes, feel free. And there it is in all its glory.
And that is it for this edition of Top Story. Many thanks to our International Affairs editor, Annette Young. Stay with us here on France 24 Live from Paris. Continues in just a moment. Bye-bye.
How does the world's #1 in women's tennis treat herself between games and continents? She flies Turkish Airlines.
Game, set, and match, Wozniacki.
We are Turkish Airlines. We are globally